Yeah, my name's Ed Davey. No, I am not the leader of the Liberal Democrats. I am the policy and public affairs manager. I'm promoting myself now. Manager at Centre for Mental Health, which is a national mental health research charity interested very much in local government, but also in kind of the social justice side of mental health. And I'm here with my colleagues who have helped a huge amount, and I'm really grateful for them for that. So we've got some excellent speakers from the region. This is the South East England regional launch of the Mentally Healthier Councils Network. We've been working our way down the length of England, and we've made it to the South East, where I was born and bred in Kent, in Canterbury, so a region close to my heart. And so, yeah, fabulous to have you all. Thanks so much for giving up some of your time. Hopefully it will be interesting and useful. If you have any questions or comments, do use the chat function. Perhaps you could use the chat function now to introduce who you are and what your job role, if you have one, is, just so we get a sense of who's in the space. That'd be great. And yeah, do then add any questions or comments, and we'll come to them hopefully after we've heard from the speakers. But there will be a chance to kind of use real life, if you see what I mean. Put your hand up and hopefully we'll bring in some speakers and questions if you have any. So as I say, Centre for Mental Health has been going for more than 30 years. It's the UK's leading mental health research charity, and we support mental health equality through research, policy, development, lobbying and campaigns. And we are directly commissioned by local and regional authorities, the NHS and others, to evaluate research and co-produce policy and approaches. I've just put up here a report we did last year, which was we were assisting the West Midlands Combined Authority on a mental health commission they did, and we helped write their report. That they've got a new mayor up there now, so we're hoping he picks it up and runs with it. But we've also done lots of work with, as I say, local authorities. We're working on a Birmingham and Solihull joint strategic needs assessment for mental health, and a similar one in Greenwich in London. We evaluated the Better Mental Health Fund for OHID, the Office of Health Improvement and Disparities, where 40 local authorities did amazing public mental health work. So we do all kinds of stuff like that. And here, I'm sure you guys all know this stuff, it's bread and butter to you, but just a reminder about what the protective and risk factors of mental health that are amenable to action. So some of the protective factors are having a secure and sufficient income, fair treatment, positive parenting. Sorry, I've just got the invite into the room bit up in front of my screen, which I'm sure Bethan's handling better than I could. Positive parenting, positive school experience, secure, decent housing, access to healthy natural environments, exercise, healthy diet, abstinence from smoking and substances, community connectivity and relationships. And then the risk factors are basically the opposite of the protective factors, so I won't read through them all, but you can have a look at that at your leisure. And then try to move on the slide. So what you can get from those lists, I think, is that they're not really much to do with the NHS or health services. They're a lot to do with the sorts of things that local government's involved with and has levers over. So what have councils got to do with mental health? Well, everyone in this room, I'm sure, is more than aware of it. But just to recap some of the things, since 2013, public health moved back into local government from the NHS. And that includes work on and responsibility for mental illness prevention, improving well-being, treating substance use issues and preventing those issues where possible, doing things like health visiting. Also, sexual health services are part of the public health duty, along with smoking cessation and all kinds of other things. Councils are obviously part of integrated care systems. They host health and wellbeing boards and health watch bodies. They're obviously responsible for at upper tier level or unitaries, adult and children's social care and safeguarding. They're the licensing authority for alcohol and gambling. They're the planning authority for housing, transport and green spaces. They're quite often the biggest social landlord in an area, and they're provider and custodian of parks, community centres, libraries, advice services. They're quite often one of the biggest employers and economic actors in an area, and they have a role in education. And that's demonstrated by that little diagram there that my daughter knocked up for me. She's doing her GCSEs, but she still took time to do my little diagram. I did pay her, by the way, London Living Wage. And what has Centre for Mental Health got to do with councils? Well, as Councillor Lilley from the Isle of Wight, one of our speakers, said before we started, he rightly identified that we did start the local government mental health challenge over 10 years ago, which is the kind of predecessor scheme to the one we're launching today. And we recruited over 100 elected councillor champions who did all kinds of amazing things, and we supported them to do that, and they supported us by telling us the kind of things that would be useful and telling us their inspiring stories of leadership in local government. And for the last 2 years, we've produced mentally healthier council election manifestos, this and last year, which we have been encouraging political parties and council administrations to take up ideas as they fight elections, and then if they get into administration, they can put those council policies into action. And as I say, we provide direct services. So we've spent 2.5 years supporting 7 now. It says 5, but I'm up to 7 Greater Manchester councils. We coordinate the Thrive London Councillor Mental Health Champion Network with regular meetings and sharing information. And we consistently lobby for councils nationally. So we're part of the mental health policy group. We meet ministers and civil servants and other people, and we always try to go into bat for local government and say how important it is that you have the powers and resources that you need to do your jobs as effectively as possible. And for the last nearly a year now, we've had the Mentally Healthier Councils Network, which is generously funded by the Health Foundation, who have some great resources for local government as well. And that's allowed us to kind of pick up the local government mental health challenge, which we hadn't had any funding for years and years. And so we've kind of like refreshed the brand, refreshed the energy, got a bit more admin support. Bethan, principally, thank you, Bethan, is helping us to kind of connect people. And I think we're approaching sort of 300 members, and well over 100 councils are represented in the new scheme. So we're already surpassing what we were doing under the old scheme. So that shows the appetite and the need for this kind of coordination, I think. So as I say, it's funded by the Health Foundation. It's free to join and open to all elected councillors. And this is the new bit, also council officers. We think public mental health officers sometimes get a bit isolated, but it's open to all council officers, because nearly everything councils do, as I just described, has something to do with mental health, right? Whether you're looking after the parks or the libraries or the leisure centres, or trying to put in cycle lanes or pedestrianisation or planting trees or looking after schools. I could go on, as you could tell. Nearly every council officer has something to do with mental health. We want to recruit hundreds. We've already got hundreds. Maybe we could get to 1,000. That'd be amazing. And the idea is that we share information. We've got a monthly e-newsletter, which Bethan puts together with lots of sort of current useful information that's very well read and opened. We want to share best practice and networking opportunities. We're just putting together a kind of national event that we hope to hold in July in Southwark, in London, near London Bridge. It will be hybrid, so if you can't make it to South London, you can join us remotely. When we've got dates for that, we'll send out the details. And we're going to focus on doing mental health joint strategic needs assessments, among other things. So that might be kind of some useful tips for you. We're currently working on a guide on how to do a good mental health needs assessment. Jess is nodding away. It sounds like that could be useful, or maybe she's got some tips for us. And yes, this is one of 9 regional events we're holding over the next year. I think we're up to about, I think you're number 6, something like that. And we also want to produce a policy document in the next few months called something like 100 mentally healthier council policies. We'd love to hear from you if you have policies that are particularly good for mental health that you think colleagues across the country and local government would like to hear about. They don't have to be directly to do with mental health, although that's interesting too. They could be things that indirectly benefit mental health by reducing poverty or improving the environment or getting people physically active or getting better housing, or things that benefit mental health directly and indirectly. And we'd like to put that together so we can share good practice, all the amazing things that you guys are doing, because you're the ones actually doing the hard work on the ground, not us. And in year 2, we're looking at creating an accreditation scheme, and we're in talks with OHID about making that work with the Prevention Concord Act, which you may or may not have heard of, which is a scheme OHID took over from Public Health England to encourage bodies like councils to do more on preventing mental ill health. So that's an exciting development as well. So you can help by promoting the network in any events and meetings where you may come across councillors or council officers, which, given that most of you from local government, is quite a lot of meetings, I should think. I'm sure Bethan will put the links in the chat to the more information, get people to sign up, only takes seconds. And as I say, if you come across any relevant local government mental health news, please let us know and we can share it. And as I say, we can provide a range of useful services and information to you, both directly commissioned, but also through this scheme as well. So do get in touch if we can help with things like mental health JSNAs, complex system mapping, co-production, and other stuff. And as I say, do tell us your good practice. This is just one example that I really liked last year in the Lancet Public Health, that showed the community wealth building scheme that Preston Council led on had actually increased life satisfaction scores by 10% and reduced prescriptions of antidepressant medication by about 10%. So sometimes people think it's a bit abstract doing preventative work about the economy or children or the environment, but it can have a direct impact on people's mental health, as this study, among others, shows us. So we'd love to hear your examples as well. I will now stop sharing and stop talking. Don't cheer that I'm stopping talking, I know, but I'm sure we definitely want to hear from the other speakers. So I'm going to hand over, first of all, to Councillor Lilley, who is a long-standing champion of mental health on the Isle of Wight, which I believe, Councillor Lilley, is the UK's smallest unitary authority. I could be wrong about that, but it's certainly a unique one given its kind of geography. So Councillor Lilley, over to you.
Yes, well it is, and we call you North Island because we're the island. So and one of the particular issues is we're often having to fight our identity as an island because that piece of water, the Solent, is one of the most expensive pieces of water to cross because the ferries are private and they put up the fares when they like. There is no regulated ferry service. So my name is Councillor Michael Lilley. I'm a Lib Dem councillor on the Isle of Wight Unitary Authority. So that basically covers everything. I am the chair of the Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Health and Social Care, and I'm the Isle of Wight Council's mental health champion. My background is actually, I was a mental health professional up until 2017 when I retired at the age of 60, working actually in the West Midlands and running one of the largest community-owned psychological practices called My Time, which is still operating in the West Midlands under the Richmond Fellowship, with the Recovery Focus group of charities. So I came, when I was elected in 2017, the first thing I did was join up to the Centre of Mental Health Local Government Association Mental Health Challenge, and actually wasn't elected as the mental health champion. It was a Conservative administration at the time, and they didn't want this sort of green liberal to have a voice. So I had to fight with that. They're in opposition at the moment, but they would still like to shut me up. That. I'm also now the prospective parliamentary candidate for the one of the 2 seats on the island for the Liberal Democrats. So you can give good reason that there's probably a voice that they don't want to hear. I was very active in the voluntary sector because that's my sort of DNA. And obviously during COVID, I chaired the voluntary sector forum and brought all the sectors together in a virtual kind of network, which was important over that time, which did actually start a very good dialogue between the health sector and the voluntary sector, which is still very strong today. I'm going to go straight on and introduce a little film, because one of the things that I managed to achieve was to get a grant fund established to give money to community groups, peer support groups, to actually help each other. It's a passion of mine. My feelings were that public health shouldn't be all about training and reports. It should be about interventions. So establishing a grant fund was quite an achievement, and that actually supported about 28 community-based projects. And the film is just an example of one of those. So if we see the film, and then I'll tell you a little bit more after it.
Hours than anywhere else in the UK. The most beautiful beaches, brilliant music festivals. So why do almost half of all young people here feel terribly alone or isolated? My name is Jackson Peace, and I was in that half of respondents who knows what loneliness here feels like. Geographically separate, socially alienating, and when the pandemic hit, you know the rest. Right now, support services for young people are at a breaking point. It's near impossible to even get a referral. I'm here at Department today to talk to young people about their struggles.
Mental health services on the Isle of Wight for young people are probably the worst they've ever been in my professional career. I've never seen it this dire, this situation. It's unprecedented.
I'm Luke, I'm 19 years old. I personally think it's a growing thing that a lot of young people that have moved here, like myself, are experiencing loneliness. I say it's a very common thing.
So tell me about when you first moved here.
Difficult, very difficult, because obviously new people, I don't know anyone, and the only time I had a collection of people was when I was in education, and that's come to an end. So now I'm kind of alone.
Hi, I'm Robin and I'm 16. Lockdown was really tough for me. It was a horrible experience. I lost all my sort of socialising skills. I struggled with the education side as I've got dyslexia. Pre-COVID, I could sort of speak to many people, but during and after COVID, I lost touch with who I was.
My name is Isaac, I'm 21 years old. The last few years, just being trapped in my room on my own constantly, I don't even know how to put it into words, it's just really difficult. I kind of just spend all day wishing that I was dead. I don't know what to do. I feel completely helpless. It's not like I can just go outside and go somewhere and start, fixing my problems. All I can really do is just go on the internet and try and forget that I exist.
My name is Christian and I'm 16 years old. I use a walker and a wheelchair mainly. obviously the buses are very unpredictable, and obviously I can't always predict how long it's going to take me to do things. If I'm not going out, I'm playing games, and obviously that's not great to do all day, and I don't want to do that all day, but there's nothing else to do.
My name is Leisha and I'm 20 years old. So I went to high school when it all started, and I just started getting really badly bullied. Like, students were being nasty, even the teachers were being nasty. Like, they would sit me at the back of the class and just basically treat me like I'm just a brick wall. With my mental health, I've obviously felt lonely at times, where like I would just go out for a walk and just have like breakdowns where I'm just sitting on a bench just sobbing like my heart out. And like, especially with last year, I felt like I failed everything last year, where I just didn't want to basically not be in the world anymore. I just completely lost hope.
Being a young adult is usually the part of people's lives that they look back on fondly. It's meant to be the highlight, but for me it's just kind of been nothing. I feel like I've lost it all. I feel completely aimless, thinking about how many years I've wasted not having any friends, not developing myself or doing anything.
It's common belief that the island is devoid of opportunities for young people. But does it have to be this way?
Young people should have a voice. That's just basic, surely. They deserve a voice, and actually their voice is really valuable.
One thing that needs to change is that disabled people, especially after lockdown, need more help getting back into the world socially and making sure they feel supported and listened to.
I want social spaces for young people. I want a lot more social spaces for young people. I struggle with it a lot.
Something that would help would be better access to mental health services on the Isle of Wight.
I just want to be supported and emotionally and socialise much more.
I just want somewhere I can go where I can meet other people around my age, people like me. I think projects like this are really starting to give me hope that that may be possible, at least in the future.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that. It's, in a sense, was a visual example of the 28 projects that we supported, because they were all about actual getting people together in their communities, whether it was communities of interest, age, part of the LGBT community, veterans, or a geographic community. In a town or a village. The idea being that if you have a meal together, if you're actually able to be in a place where support services can actually come together and actually look at you holistically, as opposed to a separate, so you're dealing with debt, or you're dealing with lack of employment opportunities, you're dealing with bereavement, by actually by coming together. So Ventnor, which is a town in the Isle of Wight, it has a I think daily kind of a welfare well-being cafe where people can have a meet together, discuss things, and also have a meal. Those kinds of projects bring people together, and they then build up the resilience to find solutions where they live. And I think it's extremely important, this sort of a concept of accessibility. My last particular point is for you to sort of know about the importance, what we can do politically. Every council will have some form of health scrutiny committee, which is linked right up to the health select committee in Parliament. It actually has powers, and one of the things that you can do, and I have done as chair, is you can call all the health partners, right, together and actually discuss. So in the position of mental health, we had a meeting, we presented the film that you saw, and we had representatives from a number of groups, had a former prison governor, because we have obviously a big prison on the Isle of Wight, and he'd been a veteran, and he talked about trying to take his own life, and how a project called Men Only on the island had actually saved him, not the mental health services, because he was a veteran, he was a police officer, sorry, a prison governor, and he didn't want to go and necessarily talk into the public sector because that would expose him, until he was brave enough to tell the world about it. And because of that positive experience with the Men Only project, he is now able to change a lot of the mental health services from a direct experience within the prison service. So for me, it was actually trying to get two things. One, we're all in it together. Mental health affects us all. I was a single parent dad for 20 years, from having little children due to the mental health of my wife at the time. And that my particular sort of needs was I needed to talk to other men who were going through similar experiences. What we did with that committee was you had all the main players there. You had the NHS, you had the ICB, the commissioners. They were all in the room and they were able to have a dialogue. And it was the first time they had a dialogue, right? Together. And we talked about pathways so that there was a seamless pathway to acute services if needed. But there was also a prevention in the community from that happening, but also a movement back when people were coming out of acute services. Because at the end of the day, whether people go into services, they will come out and they're back into the community. Unless you've got their support services there, they will just revert back, and you will then get the swing doors side. The last particular point is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I think you mentioned this, Ed. I've always been a very strong supporter of Maslow. The reality is if you're poor, if you've hit with high energy bills like we were through a cost of living crisis, if you have poor housing, if you don't have, because your family is split up and you don't have the support networks because you're a single parent family, etc. You need help to sort those issues out. And I think that is a particular part. We do have two very good voluntary sector organisations on the island. One called the Isle of Wight Youth Trust, which I was a trustee of for about 10 years, which is not just counselling now, it's a range of life skill kind of social activities. And we also have the Iseropia Foundation, which is an adult version of a community enterprise in particular. And both of those are contracted by the NHS to provide services. And I think one of the things that I'm very concerned of is that we often get stuck in the contract culture of perhaps commissioners imposing onto the voluntary sector, when in fact they should be learning from the voluntary sector and actually cascading that learning into their practices. Because at the end of the day, unless we're listening to people who are experiencing mental health issues, experiencing services, we are not going to provide good services. And that's my last sort of message. And I think politically, compared to officers, I can, with other politicians, get changes and change policy. And the Isle of Wight has mental health totally written into its policies and structures. Thank you.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much, Councillor Lilley. And I myself was a councillor for 12 years, and including health scrutiny chair for some time. In fact, I am the reigning LGIU scrutiny champion. And because they scrapped the award after they gave it to me, I will be forever unless they bring it back. So unfortunately, Councillor Lilley, you can't win that off me. They've scrapped it, so that's me forever now. But you're quite right. And you know, local politicians have an important part to play, as you've described. One of the most useful things I did probably was something I had no formal powers over, which was I helped persuade some of our local NHS trusts to get living wage accredited. I couldn't order them to do it. I had no formal power to do it, but I managed to kind of persuade them in a way that an officer couldn't. And that then lifted lots of low-paid workers out of poverty wages and benefited their mental and physical health. And so that shows the kind of one of the ways politicians can be valuable. In this day and age, it's kind of hard to see the value of some politicians. But anyway, in local government at least.
Don't disagree with you.
we can do some useful things. So that was great to hear. And it was great to hear directly from the young people, and reminded me again of like how, you know, it's been such a difficult period for them with austerity that's cut 80% of youth services across the UK, COVID that really isolated a lot of people and disrupted their education. I think this generation's had a really, really rough time, and the more we can do in local government and elsewhere to support them, the better. So that's great, really fantastic to see. Okay, we'll go from the South Island to the North Island. I'm going to go, Hampshire's a bit too close to the Isle of Wight, so I'm going to mix it up a little bit, and we'll go to Kent, and we've got an officer who is Jess Mookerjee, who we're delighted to have with us. Jess, thank you so much for coming. And you are the Assistant Director for Public Health in Kent County Council, which is my home county. And so we're delighted to have you. Thanks so much, Jess. Over to you.
Thanks. Can everyone hear? Can you hear me okay? Presuming you can. That's good. Nice to be here today. And can Bethan put my presentation up? Thank you. Thanks, Bethan. I'm getting Bethan to do it because I'm worried about breaking the internet and things like that. I'm sure I don't have the power to do that. But thanks, Bethan. So thanks for inviting me. And I was asked to talk about policies and initiatives addressing the wider determinants of mental health and building alliances for health and well-being. And it was really interesting to hear what Ed was saying about how councils can pretty much reach every aspect of a person's mental health and well-being. Bethan, can we go to the next slide? Great, thank you. So if a council, and Kent is a two-tier council, so we are in the position of being an upper tier council and having 12 district councils that we work closely with. And then alongside that, we have 4 healthcare partnerships linking to the NHS and 1 ICB, 1 kind of health authority, let's put it that way. So, you know, it's a complex arena. But as Ed was saying, you know, everything that a council does links to some aspect of mental health. So in my experience of sort of 25 years of working in public mental health, it's and I've seen lots of different approaches that councils have taken. So there's the kind of everything we do links to public mental health, and that's marvelous. But then it's a potential that it could get lost in everything that we do. So over the years, I've been really heartened by the improved focus on then the outcomes and some of the very sad outcomes that can happen to somebody's mental health if we're not specific and tracking what our actions and power that we have got as local councils and as a health system can have on the impact of somebody's mental health. I was listening to the radio this morning, and I heard a sentence that really impacted on me, and it was that us as people are one of the biggest impacts on other people's mental health. So everything I do has some impact on your mental health, whether I like it or not. And we also have responsibility for our own selves, that's true. But those policies that are created have impacts on mental health, and then there are people who create policies. So I think it's important to acknowledge that sort of the power that we do have directly impacting on people's mental well-being. I've put this slide up. This is Margate. This is our one of our most deprived areas in Kent. And you can see the key thing here is that there are generations of people who have had economic inactivity, let's put it that way in a jargony way, but basically people who've been unemployed for 3 generations. And alongside that comes a number of emotions. There are what did the population think of people who've been unemployed for generations? Economic policies are based on, right, well, the answer to their mental health problems must be get them back into employment, which is simplistic, particularly in an area with some long-standing issues like Margate. So can we go to the next slide, please, Bethan? So what are we going to do? I mean, again, one of the key things is acknowledging where we have power as a system. So, for example, and it was really great to hear from our local councillor as well, because it's using those routes to power. So we've got a local councillor in Margate who is a local champion for issues around gambling. And he has raised tirelessly for the last 4 or 5 years, let's do something, let's do a strategy for gambling, for reducing the impact of distress that comes from gambling. And he has lobbied and he has worked alongside me, and we don't have any resources to do this. We're not resourced to have a strategy for gambling, but there are things that we can do. So we are looking at a programme of work around the coastal areas. So we've got Thanet, we've got Canterbury, not Canterbury, sorry, we've got, thinking about what's on our coast now, and we've got Dover, with huge amounts of problems in Dover in terms of coastal poverty and political issues as well. And of course then Folkestone and Hythe, and bits of the north around Whitstable as well. So can we go to the next slide, please? So I was talking a little bit about the generations of those who were unemployed in Margate, and just to kind of highlight really the complexity. So we're building health alliances in every single district of Kent, and we've done this very quickly. and it starts with, so we've been working since the summer in getting local health alliances formed together, and these are alliances of the interested, the committed, and the key stakeholders in not just in public mental health, but also in other aspects, wider aspects of health as well, such as housing. So a couple of the things that we are doing is we are looking at, from a Kent County Council perspective, involvement and engagement. It's that ladder of participation that's really important here. It's easy to be seen as a local authority that just consults. It's much harder to do meaningful participation at a very local grassroots level. We know that we're dealing with chronic stress, people's chronic stress, excuse me, which is leading to high mental health, high levels of disability. So again, we can't just say, get people into jobs, get businesses set up quickly. You know, it's harder to do that. So one of the things I think we were very proud of was during COVID, we learnt a lot from a really impactful process that was happening in South London, which is the South London Listens. And we used a lot of that and knowledge and information and put that into Kent and Medway. So we did, I think, one of the biggest mental health engagement processes that certainly for about 15 years that's been done. Kent and Medway Listens was an approach that we did through the voluntary sector, voluntary and community organisations. We engaged them to have very powerful conversations with key community groups at very, very local level. And we wanted to know, what's life like for you now post-COVID? What was COVID like for you? And what is it that we need to kind of address in terms of if we wanted to have a meaningful mental health and wellbeing concordat? What is it that the statutory services really need to hear? And what came out of the Kent and Medway Listens, and we had huge amounts of engagement across all districts, and it was really hard listening. It was difficult listening. It was sad. There were people who were very acutely aware that they couldn't get mental health services. There were people who felt, through no fault of their own, a huge amount of shame about the situation that they had found themselves in terms of their poverty. There were people who were angry that even though that they were working, they couldn't afford their uniforms for their work, that they were themselves carers, that they were themselves having to pay for their own petrol to do their own jobs. And they didn't want to ask for help. They didn't want, but they needed that to express the anger and the unfairness of that. There were people who have absolutely no idea how to maximize the benefits that they were entitled to. And there were people who were just in this sort of most desperate situations, really. And we were listening to that to think of what we could do on that. So we're also a council that is rich in natural resources. You know, we have green spaces, we have blue spaces, you know, we have beautiful coastlines, we have some fantastic parks, we have fantastic cultural resources as well, assets. The trouble is, what we were hearing from people was that a lot of the people couldn't afford to get to them. So even if you live in Margate, it's actually quite difficult to get out into the countryside if you're working full time, if you're caring, if you're working in an office full time, if you're on call, and if you're just really stressed out. And you know, it's just not a viable option. Transport across the whole of Margate, and actually across the whole of Kent, is really expensive, public transport. So again, you know, you have to really think about what you're going to do and where you're going to go. It's not just a question of just going off into the countryside and using it for your active leisure. So we were listening to all that, and we could see how sort of complex it is. It's not just a simple quick fix. So in order to make our preventative services work properly, we have to listen properly as well. So and I think if you want to have a read of the results of our Kent and Medway listens, they're all, you know, quite easy to sort of Google and get the information for that. The Live Well. Now, this is something that we're very proud of in Kent, and now it's in Medway as well. And I know Sarah's here from Medway. This was our well-being wraparound programme, and one of the things that we're really proud of, Live Well, Kent and Medway, is the way we commissioned it. We worked with two very strong CVS voluntary sector charities who then were in charge of making partnerships with the rest of the voluntary and community sector in order to provide community and grassroots routes to recovery and well-being. So, you know, anything from knowing where to go to get free counselling or some very, very subsidised counselling, right through to yoga classes, singing, choirs, but also things like benefits and knowing where your local benefits advisor could help you with specific issues, as well as, you know, befriending schemes and things like that. We've had very, very good results on that. Now, one of the key things that, you know, I would be remiss if I didn't mention was all of this is also supplied in the backdrop of council pressures as well. So again, we've got to work really, really closely with our commissioned services in how to flex these services when, you know, the Kent pound is continually stretched as well. So it's kind of, we're sort of all in it together, and we've got to remember that. Next slide, please, Bethan, if that's okay.
Yeah, just to let you know, I said at the beginning, the one job of chair is to end on time, and we've still got to squeeze Megan in, and we've only got 11 minutes. So if you could,
that's no problem.
If
sure.
you could be as concise as you can, that'd be helpful.
Thank you. I will, yes. So this slide here is substance misuse orientated. We really committed to lived experience, and we set up this year our lived experience for mentally healthy support for our substance misuse population. And it's a very vibrant group, and I think one of our aims is to get them to help us with commissioning substance misuse services because of their lived experience. Next slide, Bethan. And one of the key things is hope and arts. And our suicide prevention strategy has really focused on this year. And we've got many arts and wellbeing groups set up with our community fund. And here is an example of quite a lot of them. And we're just really proud of them, and they're award winning. So it's really important to get that message across that you've got to have something to live for. Next slide. Here's another one. Folkestone Music Town, getting all the, you know, getting Folkestone's got a very vibrant art scene, and this has been such a joy really to do that at community level. Next slide, please. And of course, our Kent Sheds you know, really important. Started with a tiny amount of money that we got from the libel fund, and started with local commitment on the Veterans and Military Covenant, and has now spread across Kent with lots and lots of self-sustaining partnerships of men doing it for themselves. And we've even got women's shed as well, and a boat shed, and they're just marvelous. And anyone who wants to know more, please go and look up the powerhouse that has been Kent Sheds. And that's it from me. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jess. That's really amazing. Yeah, and Kent Sheds are now famous, certainly nationwide, if not beyond. So brilliant innovation there. Great to see. Okay, Megan, I'm going to swiftly hand over to you. You haven't got a huge amount of time, so I'm hoping you can squeeze it down into the remaining sort of 7 minutes. Just give me 1 more minute at the end. Over to you, Megan.
Okay, thank you. So let's just work out share my screen. Brilliant. So I'm from Hampshire County Council. For context, Hampshire is, like Kent, a 2-tier authority. We have 11 districts and boroughs and 2 ICBs. We have some coastal areas and then areas of rurality as well. So I'm stood in for Sue Cochrane, who's a consultant of public health, who's unfortunately ill today. So my lead in the public health team at Hampshire is Senior Public Health Practitioner for Adults' Mental Wellbeing. So I just wanted to firstly draw your attention to the Mental Health and Wellbeing Index that was recently updated for Hampshire. So you can see on the screen here the map of Hampshire, and it very clearly identifies the areas of need around mental health and wellbeing, with those darker blue areas being in the lower deciles and therefore indicating that they are scoring less in the 3 domains that make up that index, and those 3 domains are the self, the supports, and the system. So this really helps us with prioritising and focusing our work in the, as Jess has already mentioned, financial context that the councils are currently operating in. So Hampshire has produced a mental wellbeing strategy. This is a partnership strategy, so it's not something specifically that the public health team owns. And under this strategy sit 6 priorities. So you can see here on the screen that these priorities include that system-wide focus on prevention, looking at those wider determinants of health that have been common threads throughout all of the presentations that we've been talking about today, looking at reducing the stigma and considering how the workforce have skills and capabilities. Of course, suicide prevention is always a really important element of everything that we do. And then finally, focusing on those high-risk groups. On the left-hand side of the screen here, you can see a screenshot of our Mental Wellbeing Hampshire webpage. And this is what we produced as a public-facing resource that we use for a lot of our signposting campaigns, and when we're doing specific pieces of work. It means we can kind of collate all the information from trusted local and national support services into one place. So I'm now just going to look at a few key pieces of work that we've been doing underneath the strategy in a little bit more detail. So the first of these is focusing on money and mental health. So back in early 2021, we set up the Hampshire Money Mental Health Partnership. So this was actually before all of those headlines around cost of living crisis. So it was a really good starting point for us, already having brought together people from mental health services and people who work in the financial support world together to have conversations. And so that partnership has 4 core aims, which you can see there on the right hand of your screen. As part of the work that this partnership has completed, we co-created some money and mental health training for frontline workers. And we've actually delivered 3 rounds of this training now, and it's been very, very well received. We've had people from housing, from food banks and food pantries and holiday activity programs, to people who work in mental health and mental wellbeing support roles, and lots of other community organisations as well. Alongside that, we work with our local talking therapy service to include the Money Worries module from the Cllr app, so that those that are using that app to support their wellbeing are also able to explore how money worries might be impacting on their mental health. And we've also delivered a range of different targeted communication campaigns on digital channels, which is what was playing in the bottom left-hand side of the screen there. And finally, we have worked with Citizens Advice in Havant, who have developed this Work Out Your Money financial education programme to roll out the learning and the courses that they have delivered in Havant to other areas of need across Hampshire. So we've specifically focused on children and young people who live in areas of deprivation, and also young carers and care leavers. And then for adults as well, focusing on some of those areas of deprivation. So Jess has already mentioned about the importance of green and blue spaces and mental well-being, and this is one of the actions that we started delivering very early on after we launched our mental well-being strategy. So again, we brought together multi-agency partners who work in both those kind of nature environment conservation fields, with partners who work in the mental well-being fields. And that's really benefited them in terms of being able to network, share opportunities, that kind of green social prescribing conversation. And we've heard from Surrey, who is one of those 6 national green social prescribing pilot areas, about the work that they've done there. So we can learn and look to see what might be applicable also to the Hampshire area. And then excitingly today, for Mental Health Awareness Week, we've just launched some new sensory trails, which we've delivered with partners to enable people who might not typically have seen themselves represented or able to access green and blue spaces, to go and explore something that they know is accessible to them and have an opportunity to connect with nature. And again, we know that there's lots of research available that shows the benefits for your mental well-being through nature connectedness. As I mentioned, Hampshire is very rural, so we've also been
Megan, can I just stop you just for a sec?
Yeah.
I failed the only task I set myself, which was to finish on time. I will come back to you, Megan, to let you finish. But for those of you who have to go, if you've got a 2 o'clock meeting, just thanks very much for coming. I think you'll agree we've had some brilliant speakers, some terrible chairing, but never mind. But thank you very much for coming. Do share the links that we've shared so that you can get other people to join and be on the mailing list so you can hear about other events, and we'll share the resources from today as well. So thanks very much. If you're able to hang on just for a couple more minutes and let Megan finish, then you'll be very welcome to do that. But for those of you who have to go at 2, thanks so much for coming. Megan, back to you.
Thanks. I've only got 2 slides, so it won't be long. So yes, we did some targeted work as well with our rural population, specifically those that are in the farming and agricultural industries. So with partners in Trading Standards Animal Health, our Country Watch Police team, and the national voluntary organisation Farming Community Network, we undertook a survey of farmers' mental well-being almost 2 years ago now. And following the results of that, we've now undertaken a series of what we call Yarn in a Barn, social and information events in those key rural areas. That's an opportunity to bring people together, to hear about some of the support that's available for the top concerns that came out of that survey, and also obviously socially connect, because that's really important for people that spend all day, every day working alone on a farm. And alongside that, we also produced this support directory, which you can see in the top of your screen there, and that is included as a printout in all of the information that's sent out from trading standards when there's an animal welfare complaint that comes in from a member of the public. And that's because typically we know if a farmer's not looking after their animals very well, often it's because they're struggling themselves, and that may well be to do with finances, their health, mental or physical, other reasons. So we tend to send that out with all of the communications that go to farmers now. And finally, I just wanted to touch on the work that we're doing through Chatabout, which is our social connection programme, looking to reduce loneliness and tackling stigma. So we've been working with our libraries across Hampshire to offer these free community sessions, which is just an opportunity for people to come in, play some games, have a conversation, read a book, do a puzzle, whatever. And a volunteer there who has undertaken the Zero Suicide Alliance training and the mental health awareness training from e-learning for health is just on hand to help make people feel welcome, facilitate conversation, and to appropriately signpost as and when they need to. I'll stop there because I'm aware of time.
That's brilliant, Megan. Thank you so much, and thanks for stepping in at the last moment. You've done a really fantastic job. And being a Londoner and thinking a lot about urban mental health, I do sometimes forget about the importance of rural mental health. So it's really good to be reminded of that and the important work that you're doing down there in that regard as well, because obviously there are different kind of challenges, especially around accessing services and public transport and financial issues related to the rural economy. So that's really interesting to hear. But yeah, I'm reminded from all three speakers of like one of our straplines at Centre for Mental Health is that mental health is made in communities, and that has been brought home to me today by our three excellent speakers that are all in slightly different kind of circumstances, and they're responding appropriately with their communities to the needs and the resources that they have there. And that's why local government is so important in mental health, that it can't be directed from Whitehall, and it shouldn't be. It has to be communities being empowered and resourced, importantly, to do things for and with themselves for their own mental health. And I think we've heard from our three speakers powerfully to that effect today. And the importance of co-producing as well. Local government isn't the last stop in sort of devolving power. We also need to hear from the young people like we did from the Isle of Wight, or the kind of examples of co-production that we heard from as well. So brilliant speakers, really inspiring. I hope you found it useful. Apologies for overrunning. Terrible chairing, I'll learn one day. Even though I won an award for being a scrutiny chair, I still can't chair a meeting properly and keep it on time. But never mind, we're all learning, lifelong learning. But I really appreciate the speakers, my colleagues for helping organise, and for all of you for participating. Do go out and share the links, get people to join up. It's free. I hope to see you again in July when we have our kind of national 1 year on event, either in London Bridge, or we will set up a hybrid kind of virtual possibility. So from the North Island, as I shall now call the rest of the UK, to the South Island and everyone else, thanks so much for coming, and have a great rest of your afternoon. Take care.